Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'll talk about an event that many of us expected perhaps a month from now, but which in fact happened last night. Long-range Ukrainian strike drones reached the village of Kirishi in the Leningrad region and struck one of Russia's largest and most strategic petrochemical complexes. The target is the Kirishi Nefteoxynthese plant, a Neftegas facility that is both an oil refinery and a major petrochemical enterprise. This is not a small installation. Kirishi is a whole petrochemical city. It refines crude oil, makes a wide range of fuels and lubricants, and produces key chemical feedstocks used in a variety of industries, including materials that can be used in munitions and other military products. To put its scale in perspective, Kirishi Nefteoxynthese processes roughly 21 million tons of crude per year. Only the Omsk refinery in Russia has a larger throughput, about 22 million tons. In the European part of Russia, Kirishi is the largest refinery and a central node of the regional fuel supply chain. It was modernized with Western equipment at great expense. Hundreds of millions were poured into modernization programs so that the plant would operate with top-tier technology and efficiency. Given that combination, huge capacity, advanced equipment, and a complex petrochemical product mix, Kirishi has always been heavily protected. Unlike many refineries that are primarily economic targets, this complex was treated as a strategic asset. It has robust air defenses, surveillance, and hardened security measures more akin to what you'd expect around a military installation than an industrial plant. That level of protection explains why prior attempts to reach it by drone had failed. The defenses were formidable. There's another reason the site attracted such protection. Through a labyrinth of corporate structures, Neftegas is widely reported to be linked to Vladimir Putin's inner circle. In plain terms, this refinery is sometimes described as part of the private economic crown of the Russian leadership. That adds political and personal value to its economic importance. In short, it was a high-value, well-guarded target. Last night, however, several long-range strike drones breached those defenses. Video from the scene shows two separate fires, one very large and one enormous. Based on the nature of the flames and the pattern from other recent strikes, it appears the drones struck primary processing units, the sort of units that, if disabled, effectively halt production. Initial reports indicate hits to the ELOU of V6 and ELOU of VT2 units, primary crude distillation, or conversion trains, though satellite imagery will give a clearer picture in the coming hours and days. Regardless, the scale of the fires suggests serious damage to essential refining infrastructure. Given that much of the plant's critical equipment is Western-made and not easily replaceable under current sanctions and export controls, repairs, even if possible, will be costly and slow. Beyond pure economics, there is a strong symbolic element to this strike. By damaging a facility tied so closely economically and politically to Russia's top leadership, the attack was both strategic and demonstrative. It sent a clear message: Ukrainian long-range strike capability can reach deeply into high-value nodes of the Russian industrial base. Some commentators put it bluntly: this was a blow to Putin's personal financial interests, as well as to state revenues. Whether you prefer a less personal or more political framing, the fact remains, this plant is central to fuel supplies in the Russian northwest, and that makes the impact of its disablement both practical and highly visible. What follows from that? If Kirishi partially or fully suspends operations, the region will feel it quickly. The northwest of Russia relies heavily on this plant for gasoline, aviation fuel, and various petrochemical inputs. Military units based in that theater and the logistics chains that support them will find their fuel sources constrained. Planned operations that depend on reliable fuel logistics may be disrupted or delayed. St. Petersburg, a city of roughly 4 to 5 million residents, could also face reduced availability of higher-grade fuels, with attendant price rises and local shortages. In Russia, high-octane fuels, for example, AI-95 and above, have always been scarcer than diesel and lower-octane gasoline. Attacks on facilities that produce those fuels disproportionately impact availability of premium products. This strike fits into a broader pattern. Systematic attacks on refineries and export infrastructure are designed to remove Russia's ability to refine and to ship petroleum products, and thus to choke off the major source of foreign currency inflow. When refineries stop, exports fall. When ports and pipelines are damaged, crude can't leave. When oil has no market or storage, production must be curtailed, and wells can be mothballed. Mothballing wells is not a trivial thing. Taking a well offline and then bringing it back is technically complex and expensive. Over time, repeated disruptions raise operational costs across the oil industry, depress revenues, and contribute to rising inflation and financial strain on the state budget. One important economic consequence is that Russian internal transport and fuel costs rise as refining capacity shrinks. Historically, Russia's low domestic fuel prices have been a structural advantage. Long-distance transport inside a huge country became cheaper, which mitigated some of Russia's broader structural inefficiencies. But if domestic fuel prices are pushed up toward Western levels, transport costs for businesses increase dramatically, and the competitiveness of Russian industry is undermined across the board. In some regions, we are already seeing bizarre results. Scarcity drives traders to charge higher prices, even than those in countries without domestic refining capacity. If that trend continues, the structure of the Russian economy will change fundamentally, and not in Putin's favor. The Kirishi strike is one part of a larger, sustained campaign. Overnight sabotage on railways in the Oryol region reportedly disrupted the Moscow-Kursk-Belgorod corridor, a vital logistical artery heading into frontline regions. In the Leningrad region, rail sabotage derailed a locomotive and around 15 fuel tankers, causing fires and significant infrastructure damage. Another incident injured and killed at least one train operator. In the Perm region, drones struck the Metafrax chemical plant, a major producer of carbamide, methanol, and ammonia materials that have civilian uses but are also important in the industrial chain for explosive precursors. Taken together, these operations show a synchronized effort. Strike fuel refining and transport, strike chemical plants that support munitions production, disrupt rail and pipeline lines that move fuel and supplies. The effect is to multiply pressure on the Russian economy and on its military logistics simultaneously. From a high-level strategic standpoint, the logic is straightforward. Cutting refining capacity reduces available gasoline and aviation fuel. Harming export and transport nodes reduces foreign exchange revenues. Disrupting chemical plants and rail lines constrains production and mobility. The combined result is a severe blow to both the Russian state's finances and the practical capacity to sustain extended military operation. Economically, these measures accelerate inflation and drive up the cost of living and doing business. Politically, they erode confidence among business owners, as demonstrated by recent appeals from industrial leaders asking Moscow for compensation for damage from strikes. The Kremlin has limited fiscal room to respond, with a nasty budget hole and constrained reserves. Large-scale compensation and rebuilding are politically and financially difficult. We should be realistic. Russia's economy is large and resilient in many respects. It has withstood sanctions and shocks for years. It will not collapse overnight. But these operations accelerate the exhaustion of economic buffers. If strikes continue and expand, the cumulative effect will be to make continuation of a resource-intensive war far more difficult. Without sustained oil revenues, the financial basis for the conflict weakens.